This is my 2015 Ram 1500. It's been leaking a little bit of coolant, so I'm changing out the radiator today in it. I've already pulled the radiator out. Unfortunately, I didn't think about recording it until after I got the radiator out. It got dark last night, so I wasn't able to finish. But this is what it looks like with it out. There's a few things that you got to note. This condenser is bolted to the radiator with a few small brackets like this one right here. So it's got a bolt right here that goes into the radiator. Also, this hose down here, you got a bolt through this plastic piece that I'm pointing at that goes into the radiator. And then on this side, there's another bracket that bolts right here that goes to the radiator. And on the bottom of that condenser, there's a bracket. It just slides in to the radiator. First thing I did before I took the old radiator out was I disconnected the negative battery terminal. In order to do that on this truck, you need a 10mm socket for this nut right here in order to get that cable off. I've got this blanket just sitting between there so it won't make contact with the battery post while I'm doing this. And of course, it looks like before I put this back together, I might have to clean the battery post off and probably the terminal just to make sure it got a good connection. And probably, for good measure, I'm going to disconnect the positive post and clean it up as well. So I got a couple other issues. There's a hose down here. This one right here has been leaking a little bit. So I'm going to have to try to cut that hose back, see if I can get a good part of that hose put on that metal pipe, and see if that'll stop the leak from that hose as well. I want to do that while the radiator's out. That way I just got more room to work with. In order to get that hose off, I don't have any special tool for those clamps, so I'm just going to use a pair of channel locks, and then once I get that hose off, I'm going to cut it back a little bit with just a razor knife. So I got that hose shortened up and put back on there. So now it's time to put the radiator back in. I don't know that I'll be able to record it though. I don't really have a great way to record tightening up these screws that are inside here. I think my hands would be in the way most of the video. So I'm going to go ahead and get this put back in. But of course the things to remember are the bolts that hold these hoses on right here, and the ones that hold these clamps on to the radiator. You got to do that before you tighten up the radiator. Here's the old radiator. There's still a couple things I got to do. It's got these support bushings right here, or these mounting bushings I got to pull off of the old radiator and put them on the new radiator. These nuts look like they came with the new radiator, so I'm going to leave those there. But this is what I was talking about. The hoses bolt through right here, and then there's another bolt right here for the other set of hoses from the AC condenser. You got to bolt all that up before you bolt the radiator in place. So I got the bushing there I got to take off, and the one on this side I got to take off. And I guess the cat wants to be in the video. Before I go any further, I wanted just to say, whenever you're doing this, before you unpackage your new radiator, you want to make sure that it looks just like the old radiator. Make sure that all the dimensions look the same. This one looks like it's the same as the one that came out, so I'm going to go ahead and unpackage it. It looks like all the dimensions are the same. Like I said, here's the new nuts to hold some of the supports in place. It does look like I'm going to need to take this nut off the old radiator, and this is where the mounting bushings go. Other than that, looks like it's in pretty good shape. The packaging was done pretty well, and we're going to get this thing going. I'll get the parts off the old radiator, put them on the new radiator, and we'll get to putting it in the truck. So I think I got this radiator ready to install now. I got the fan back on it. I ended up having to take this nut off the old radiator, and also this one right here off the old radiator. one tip when you're putting this fan on and when you're taking it off the old radiator. There's a little metal clip right here on the top, and there's the one on the bottom as well. So you'll have to pull those little clips off to get the fan off the old one. And then there's these little tabs right here you just push in on either side, and then you can just pull the fan straight up. So when you're putting it on, obviously you do the opposite. You put the fan on there, slide it down until those clips engage, and then you put these little metal clips on top and one on the bottom. They went on pretty easy for me. I ended up just setting it on there and tapping it with a rubber mallet. So this is a learning experience for all of us. I was just looking at the radiators and seeing if there's any differences. Right here on the new radiator, you got that plastic piece sticking down. On the old one, it's got these little rubber support mounts here. So looks like I'm gonna have to take these off the old radiator as well and put them on the new radiator before I can actually install it. So I've got the radiator in the truck, getting ready to tighten down all the bolts on it. I've got it just finger tight right now. In order to do this job, I want to show you what you're going to need. If you can find yours, you need the infamous 10mm socket. And then we need a 12mm socket and a 13mm socket. So these bolts on these little brackets are 10mm, and then you've got these bolts that hold the brackets down to the actual radiator. Those are 12. And then the bolts that actually go through your supports, and these bolts hold the radiator onto the truck. Those are 13mm. So what I need to do now is I need to tighten up all these bolts on these little brackets, the 12mm, these 10mm that hold the radiator to the condenser. Once I get those all tightened up, then I can put the radiator in place and go ahead and bolt it in and put the hoses back on. One more thing I want to make note of is I could use my ratchet on all the bolts except for these two right here. These two I have to use a wrench because my ratchet and socket won't fit in here. So you gotta have a 10mm wrench just for these two bolts. And be careful that you don't slide against this condenser, as it'll tear your hands up pretty bad if you do. Well, it's time to fill it up. I'm just using a 50-50 pre-diluted mix coolant here, so hopefully I don't spill too much of it. I bought 3 gallons. I'm not sure if it's going to use it all. I know it'll use at least 2 gallons to fill up the radiator. So we'll get this going, get this filled up, check for leaks, and make sure it's all good. Of course, after we fill it up, I might end up taking a test drive just to see how it does. I'm sure it'll do good, as the old radiator obviously had a bad leak in it. It was actually coming out the plastic on the one side of the radiator. I'll show you where that was leaking from. So this is the old radiator, and I just want to show you right here in this area is where it was leaking. I got a little bit of glue on there right now because I was trying to fix the issue. Tried to use some CA glue. I tried to glue on a piece of plastic over it in order to stop the leak. It looks like it might be cracked right there and possibly on this seam right here where it was coming out of. So that's the reason why we had to change this radiator on that 2015 Ram. Well, I did cut this hose back and made it shorter, but it was still leaking after that. Come to find out, it wasn't actually an issue with the hose itself. It was where this metal pipe goes into the water pump. There's an O-ring on that metal pipe, and that O-ring had gone bad. So I was able to find some O-rings, just a little kit of O-rings that I got from Lowe's. It was like $3. It had the right size O-ring in there. So I was able to fix that, and now it's not leaking anymore. So since it's not leaking anymore, I think we're going to go ahead and just fill up the rest of the system, make sure it's good, and then take it for a test drive. So I got the battery terminals cleaned up. Pretty good. It's about a 4-year-old battery. I want to make sure I try to take care of it as good as I can. I like to use a little bit of dielectric grease on the battery terminals, just to try to help prevent corrosion and stuff in the future. I didn't do it last time I put this battery on, so I'm going to do it right now, and hopefully this will actually help. I don't really know a great way to put this on. Just put a little bit on there and then smear it around with your finger. About the best way I know how to do it. And hopefully this will keep water from getting in there and keep it from corroding, at least for a while. Don't have to use a whole lot, just a little bit. Put a little bit of coating on there, just to keep the water out. Now I gotta put these battery terminals back on, and then we can take the truck for a test drive. So my truck's got 173,000 miles on it, so it doesn't disturb me too bad that I had to change the radiator. I just wish they made them out of better parts. I test drove the truck, got it up to operating temperature. I've been running the air conditioner too. You can see right there. So now we're going to get out and check for leaks and see if anything's leaking. Don't see anything under the truck. I think all that white spot there is just from when I accidentally spilled some of the fluid down on there earlier. I don't see any fresh leaks. Looks like everything's pretty good. So with all that, I think I'm going to wrap the video up here. If you like content like this, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the bell notification for when I release a new video.